I'm Carson Horn, and it's time for another edition of Talkin' Tumors, where I break down the latest happenings in Auburn athletics. Let's get rolling. It may be summertime, but Auburn basketball is at work, and the season will be here before we know it. In fact, Auburn basketball will be playing games really here soon in Greece on a foreign trip before the season gets started. The team is going to head out there. We're going to dive into the summer of Auburn basketball, some thoughts that I have on the summer so far, some takeaways from some of the things Stephen Pearl says, some of the highlights that we've seen on social media from the summer, and just the roster as a whole. I don't know about you, but I get an itch for Auburn basketball, and we're going to try to scratch that itch today on the show. So if you share that, I appreciate you listening. This is Talkin' Tumors. I am Carson Horn. Thank you so much. Before we get going, if you haven't already, I'd ask for you just to subscribe to the show and like the show as well. If you are watching on YouTube, again, I greatly appreciate you tuning in to this episode. Probably going to be a little bit of a shorter one, but again, one just to give you a little bit of a taste of maybe what's to come for Auburn basketball this season. In year 2 under Stephen Pearl, man, it still feels weird to say that, even though we've already been through a season under Stephen Pearl, but it's still going to take a minute to adjust after 11 seasons of Bruce Pearl as the head coach of Auburn basketball. But let's get into it now. I'm going to do my best to explain the roster situation throughout, just to jog your memory a little bit. Again, a lot of new players, and some of you, this may be your first time really even thinking about Auburn basketball since the season ended. Maybe you didn't really follow the off-season roster moves that much. So as I go through the show today, I'm going to do my best to make sure I'm making notes of some of the new players and giving you a little bit of information about them as I discuss them. One cool thing that Auburn basketball social media has been doing is they have been posting information about the Auburn basketball players. There have been about a minute-long video or something where they talk a little bit about themselves, and there's some images and all that. It's been a really cool thing and allows the fans to get to know the players a little bit better. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to go look on Auburn basketball social media pages, and you can find that. But let's get into it now. From what we can gather, and again, I'm not able to be at practice every day. I don't get to see everything that's going on behind the scenes. We can only judge based on a little bit of what we get from Stephen Pearl and his media appearances, and a little bit from some social media highlights. So that's not much, but there's a little bit that we can take from it. And from what I can tell, it looks like it has been a productive summer. It seems like this team is coming together well. You can only tell so much, again, from interviews and from social media, but it does seem like there are some bonds that are forming between this team. We know last year, one of the biggest downfalls of last year's team is that they weren't extremely close. It wasn't a great culture last year on this roster. And the personality, sometimes that just doesn't happen. And it is tough when you bring in a completely new team. And in last year's case, I think Philip Jovich was the last one to arrive, and he wasn't there until, I think, late July. It is tough to bring in so many new personalities and to establish a culture. But really, you had to do that again this season with only a couple players returning in Tahaad Pettiford and Kevin Overton, along with Blake Michalek. So just weren't a ton of returners. So I was interested to see, hey, maybe this team will gel better than last year's team did in a shorter period of time. And it looks to be that way. In fact, a couple players have spoken that is the case, including Tahaad Pettiford, and a couple others have mentioned that this team is closer, that they enjoy hanging out together. They actually do things together. You know, as someone who played sports growing up, sometimes I would think some of those team bonding things were cheesy. Some of those gatherings that, coaches will make you do off the field or off the court, going to hang out with one another, some of that stuff felt forced, and it felt like, hey, why do we need to do this? We're already with each other enough. Those things are important, though. If you actually legitimately care about someone and you enjoy hanging out with them, you're more likely to develop a better relationship on the court, and you're likely to play harder for one another. So I may have not thought much about it at the time, but I do think now that's very important. And I think Auburn's putting a lot of effort in to develop those relationships. You've seen it a little bit with the football team this summer as well. It's especially important when you bring in a lot of new guys to form those bonds and to form them really quickly, because you don't have much time before the season will be here. I think this Auburn team has done a good job of that so far. However, They haven't faced any adversity yet, at least not adversity against another opponent. I'm sure summer workouts have been tough, but that'll really reveal how close this team is, what the culture of this team is, what the leadership of this team is. That's a big, big, big thing I'm watching this season. Tahaad Pettiford, Kevin Overton. Who else is going to step up as leaders? For starters, Kevin Overton and Tahaad Pettiford need to be better leaders than they were last year. I thought at times KO was a solid leader for this team, but he has mentioned he's got to be a little bit less emotional. That was a bit of a problem for him last season. He'll be a little bit too emotional at times. That has to be better this upcoming season. Additionally, Tahaad Pettiford last year was late in a meeting some. He wasn't able to start a few games because of some issues. That cannot happen. Especially not, it shouldn't have happened last year. It cannot happen this year in his junior season. You are the star of this team. This team is built around you. What's his leadership going to be like? It seems like so far this summer it's been pretty good. Does that continue to improve? Does that continue to get better? I'm curious about that. I do know, based on the interviews this summer, Stephen Pearl feels good about his team, that he likes this team. He likes the makeup of this roster, and it fits him. So I think a lot's been made about this point over the last year and about last year's roster, and whether that was Bruce Pearl's roster, Stephen Pearl's roster. Here's the deal. It was Bruce Pearl's roster. However, to think that Stephen Pearl didn't have any input or had nothing to do with that roster building is just naive, and that's just excusing Stephen Pearl completely from the fact of the issues with last season's roster. He played a role in building that. But this year, this is fully his. He made the final call. There wasn't anyone else making the final call on who was added and who wasn't. And this roster, I think, fits more of what Stephen Pearl wants. It's a bigger team. Obviously, got a lot of height on this team with two guys over 7 feet tall. But you've got length at every position. And this team was built around Tahaad Pettiford. Now, that's not to say Auburn didn't try to do that last season. They did. They just failed in that experiment. It didn't go well. They didn't add the right pieces that really fit well around Tahaad. This year's team was built to, hey, let's add shooting. Let's add size. Let's add a little bit of defense here. And let's see if we can create a really good team around our star player in Tahaad Pettiford. And Auburn did that. And, of course, returning Kevin Overton as that kind of number two guy next to Tahaad Pettiford in the backcourt was important as well. But everything Stephen Pearl has shared, he seems really excited about the makeup of this roster. And you've got good personalities, too. I think he has hit on that. Guys that really like to get after it, that play really hard and play the type of basketball that Auburn fans have come to expect from Auburn basketball programs. That gritty, hard-nosed, giving it everything you got night in and night out. And that's not to knock anyone on last year's team, but maybe that effort and the consistency wasn't there as fans and had hoped to see night in and night out. As far as injuries go, there have been a few that I think Stephen Pearl hit on a little bit in maybe some of the interviews that he's done. Auburn's been doing the ambush. Is it still called that? I think it's still called that. Tour where the coaches go around and speak at different places. He mentioned Owen Freeman, who is a transfer from Iowa, but he also been in Creighton more recently. Had been in Creighton, but he's dealt with injuries in the past. Stephen Pearl mentioned that it was more of a precautionary thing than anything. He's a 6'10", 245-pound forward. He can play the 5 as well. I think Auburn's looking at him more at the 4, but he is someone who Auburn needs. I think he is someone I'm high on personally, with the caveat being, can he get healthy? So Stephen Pearl didn't seem overly concerned about it, but it is something to note considering his injury history. But he is expected to be able to play once Auburn heads out to Greece in early August for the international tour out there. I think George Kimball, he is another guy who's been a little bit banged up. He is the guard transfer from Vanderbilt. He was at Vanderbilt, got hurt before the season last year, ended up just taking a redshirt year. So Kimball was a 6'1", 200-pound guard. Again, he was really good a couple years ago before he transferred to Vanderbilt. And again, last season he was out with an injury. So that is concerning. Again, two guys with injury history that are banged up. Nothing to freak out about at this point, but it is something to make a note of. I think both players who are going to be important, Kimball being that backup guard, potentially first guard off the bench for Auburn this season. And then you've got Owen Freeman, who could be a potential even starter at the 4, could play the 5 for you, could be a backup 4, backup 5, someone with a lot of position flexibility there. So two pieces that you need to have this year if you're Auburn. So certainly Auburn's being cautious with those guys, with it only being summer, but something to keep an eye on as we head into the fall. So as far as players go, just some player thoughts, some guys who have stood out so far this summer. But I'm starting out with Tahaad Pettiford, and I just hit on this just a few minutes ago. But this team is built around him. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This team is going to go as far as Tahaad Pettiford takes it. That was something that Bruce Pearl would used to say about Jabari Smith or maybe Janai Broome. I don't know that Steven will say that, but I'm going to say it. Yes, other pieces are important. Yes, some of those guys I just mentioned are important. Yes, Kevin Overton's important. But I think the ceiling of this team is going to be determined by Tahaad Pettiford and how he develops on and off the court. How is he as a leader off the court? How is he as a leader on the court? And can he level up? He didn't have a good year last year by his standards. He, compared to his freshman year, he fell off a little bit. That was not all on him. Again, the play around him was not very good. He had a hard time adjusting to his new role and kind of figuring out his role until later in the season. Now, down the stretch, in the NIT especially, he played better and played well, I thought, to close out the year. And hopefully he can build on that. He's got to shoot at a higher percentage than he did last year. That fell off dramatically. He's a better shooter than he showed. And, again, he's got to figure out how he's going to fit with this new roster this year and figure out his role a little bit faster than he did last season. But ultimately, this team built to his strengths, and it's going to put shooting around him, which should open more things up for him, more opportunities scoring-wise, open up the lane a little bit more for him, hopefully allow him to get some better looks. So this is big. Again, everything falls on his shoulders. He is the leader. He is the alpha of this team, and nothing this summer has changed my opinion on that. As far as a summer surprise goes, true freshman guard Caleb Williams. That has been the surprise. So Caleb Williams was, I think, about a top 150 player, not a super highly rated freshman signee. He is listed at 6'5", 210 from Tampa, Florida. On the roster, not someone who Auburn expected really to be a major contributor this season, and maybe he won't be, but it seems like so far this summer, he's been a standout, and he's been further along than anticipated. I think Kevin Overton has talked about him a little bit in an interview that he had. He has shown out some of the highlights that Auburn Basketball posted on social media. He's even been playing a little bit of point guard. I figured he would be mostly a 2-3, but it looks like he has that ability to play down at the 1 some, which with George Kimball's situation potentially injury-wise, that could be beneficial to have. You can never have too many point guards. So having someone who can slide down and maybe play the 1 in addition to playing the 2 and the 3 could be really massive for Auburn. And if you can get something out of someone that you didn't necessarily expect to get anything out of this season in Caleb Williams, that's massive for this team's depth. And I'm excited about that. Again, going in, my expectations for freshmen are pretty low, especially the way Auburn is recruiting high school basketball players now. It's not the same as the way Bruce Pearl was recruiting them. Auburn's much more a transfer portal-focused program at this point and more developmental through high school. But maybe Caleb Williams is able to provide some solid minutes this year for Auburn. That would be certainly big for this team. And the player that is getting the most praise from this team is Thomas Dowd. He is getting a lot of praise from Stephen Pearl, from other players in interviews for his effort and his energy. His offensive rebounding was a strength at Troy, and it looks like he has carried that over to Auburn. He mentioned when he was interviewed that just something he believes in, that going after every single ball and the ability to grab offensive rebounds, extend possessions, add extra possessions for your team is so massive, and it's such an important role. It's something that's being emphasized more across college basketball. In the last couple seasons, we've seen some of the better teams like Florida really have high offensive rebound percentages, and it typically leads to better offense because you're getting more opportunities to score. So I love that for Thomas Dowd, someone who has been described potentially a Swiss Army knife for this team. He can play the 3, he can play the 4. He's a really good offensive player. I'm interested to see how he translates defensively in the SEC, but someone who seems to be having a really good summer, so that is good to hear. And then we talked about the size a little bit. Auburn has 2 7-foot centers who are battling it out right now. I don't know who's going to start. They're both going to play a good amount of minutes, I would anticipate, and that is Buki Oboye. I believe that is the correct pronunciation. Continue to work on that. and Narcisse Ingoy, which I do know for sure that is correct pronunciation on him because I've heard, according at least the way Stephen Pearl says it. Both guys are over 7 feet tall. I'm sky high on Buki. He is now. That's not taking anything away from Narcisse. He was the one that was drafted by the Los Angeles Clippers in the second round unexpectedly. So that was quite a surprise this summer when that happened. He didn't sign an NBA contract though. Don't freak out. He's going to be with Auburn. All it means is when he gets done with Auburn, the Los Angeles Clippers have the rights to him as a professional player. Now, with that being said, back to Buki. He is showing the ability to extend his range and shoot the three a little bit. I don't know what percentage he's shooting at this summer. We don't have those numbers. I would like to see those. If I'm sure the staff has them, I would be curious as to what that is. But we know this is something that Auburn allows their fives to do. Auburn allowed Johni Broome to be able to expand his game and shoot some threes. Auburn allowed Walker Kessler to do it. Didn't really see it much. Saw it a little bit, I guess, with Keyshawn Murphy last year, but I counted him more as a 4 playing the 5 than a true 5. But this is something that if you're going to play at the next level now, you pretty much need to be able to shoot the 3 at the 5 position. So something that's important for Buki's development as a 5, and he has that athletic ability to do so. And if he can do that, that can make Auburn's offense better if it forces defenses to have to extend and defend him out there. I don't know if that will be the case, but that is something to track heading into the fall. And because of his athleticism, because of his ability on the offensive end, I'm really high on Buki. But Narcisse, the bigger 7-footer, he's listed about 280 pounds, 7'1", just a massive, massive human being. And it's going to be really difficult to score on. I'm excited to watch both of these 7-footers. I would like to see them both on the court at the same time. Some, if possible. I'm pro the 2 big lineup after we saw it a couple years ago with Auburn, with Dylan Cardwell and Johni Broome. These 2 guys, and Narcisse and Buki, aren't going to be Johni Broome and Dylan Cardwell, but it would be cool to see those 2 guys play together a little bit. And then a guy we haven't talked about much because his signing wasn't official until I think it maybe was June, either late May or June, and that is Montas Rubastavicius. I did my best on the last name pronunciation there. This guy, I don't know what we're going to get from him. He, I think, was highly thought of by the staff, about a 6'7" wing. Stephen Pearl has compared him to Chad Baker-Mazara in some of his offensive skill sets. Don't think he has the personality of Chad Baker-Mazara, just to calm your nerves there. But I think Auburn's hoping he can be a similar player, to be a really good offensive player. Can really shoot the 3, at least based on his time in Europe, playing the position before he's made his way over here for college. So looking forward to seeing this team gel and this team to come together. And that leads us into what is coming up for Auburn basketball, and that is the trip to Greece in early August. At the time I am recording this, we do not know a ton about it. Auburn hasn't shared a ton about it. We don't know, again, at the time I'm recording this, maybe more information has come out by the time you're watching or listening. We don't know if there's going to be a way to watch any of these games or not. I would love to. I would love to be able to watch this team. I remember a few years ago when the Auburn basketball team went out to Israel. I thought that was extremely beneficial for the team, and Auburn was able to play some Israel international team, and those games were televised. That was great. I don't know, again, if that's going to be able to happen here or not, but we do know Auburn will be heading out to Greece to play some games. These international trips, again, we talked about bonding earlier in the show, are massive for that. To be able to spend time with your team and with your coaches for an extended period, and it can create really lasting bonds that could be extremely beneficial this season for this Auburn basketball team. And so I'm excited for them to get the chance to go out there and also have fun, enjoy a chance to go to Europe and see some great scenery. I've never been to Europe. Would love to go at some point, especially somewhere like Greece. So I hope that they enjoy that trip, and hopefully this will be a time to also work on their basketball and continue to get better as a team. So hopefully more information will come out on that, and certainly if they're able to televise these games in any way, we'll be able to talk about them. If not, all we'll have to look at is the box score, and we'll try to talk as much as we can about it based on that. As far as scheduling news goes, just a few things. The non-conference schedule, again, is going to be really tough. Not as tough as last season, I don't believe. Still a tough schedule. Auburn did announce that they're going to play the exhibition game in Birmingham again this year in early October, October 14th to be exact. That'll be against FSU. That's the Battling and Boutwell game. FSU expected to be a pretty solid team this year in the ACC, so a good test that doesn't count for anything, but a good gauge of where this team is at before Auburn really hits the ground running to start the season. Auburn's going to have a game against Arizona at home. That'll be the biggest non-conference home game of the year. Auburn has the Las Vegas tournament yet again, where they'll be playing a couple tough opponents. West Virginia will be the first one they'll play out there. The other two will be to be determined based on the results. Auburn goes to Clemson for the ACC SEC Challenge, and then Auburn also plays Wisconsin in Nashville. So some fun games up ahead in this non-conference slate for Auburn. It'll be another good challenge and another way for this team to be able to build its resume early in the season. So I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it. I know it's only July, but this basketball season is going to be here before we know it, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on kind of where things stood with the basketball program this summer and kind of where things are headed. I'm hopeful, again, that we'll have a way to watch the games in Greece. That way we can have some overreactions to maybe what we see out there. But a long way to go until the season. But everything so far this summer has been encouraging, and I'm looking forward to watching this team this season. And I thank you for watching or listening to this episode. Again, a shorter episode. Again, just wanted to drop in and talk a little bit about Auburn basketball. And I hope that you enjoy this one. Again, we've got another episode coming down the pike when we will dive into fall camp for Auburn football. So be on the lookout for that. A preview of Auburn football's fall camp, as it is right around the corner. And again, thank you for watching or listening. As you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the show. And we'll be back with another edition of Talkin' Tumors soon. Thank you for listening to Talkin' Tumors. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe and follow @Talkin' Tumors on social media so you'll never miss an episode. War Eagle.